All right, welcome back to the Southbound Sports Report. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, coming in on a solemn note as the Steelers were eliminated from the playoffs today. They were upset by the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'll be honest, I didn't think that they were well prepared in the game. They came out very flat. The first quarter was awful. They had a turnover. I think they had 2 turnovers maybe in the first quarter. Jacksonville marched right down the field. And in the pregame show, I talked about how they needed to stop the run. Stop the run, limit touches, whatever they needed to do. And for the most part, on an individual level, they were able to do that. Leonard Fournette, he still had over 100 yards, 3 touchdowns, 4.4 carries, but they couldn't get off the field because Blake Bortles was able to make easy completions. In this game, in the first game, he didn't do anything. He had less than 100 yards, and they were able to just push on the run. Well, I don't know if the Steelers were keying on the run too much, but Fournette was just punishing them. He went down in the third quarter. I think he got injured with an ankle. And when he went down, the Steelers had a legitimate chance to come back and take the lead, but they still couldn't get any stops. Bortles was able to just hit open guys. I mean, that was basically it. Got the touchdown. He threw over 1 touchdown in the game. Fournette did the rest. TJ Yeldon, he had a touchdown rushing as well. But other than that, the Steelers' defense was awful. They couldn't, they didn't get a push. They were dominated up front the whole game. So even if they were keying on the run, it still wasn't enough to stop them. They just needed 1 stop. The final score ended up being 45-42. This was the Jaguars team that scored, less than 10 last week, maybe 10 against the Bills. A game that both offenses were so awful that people were wondering why those teams were even in the playoffs. And that's what I'm looking at. Watching film last week, I thought for sure the Steelers were going to be in a good position. Maybe Bortles was figured out. But no, the Steelers' defense was just that bad. And it goes back to last year. Last year, they had the same problems on defense. We knew the offense can score. The offense has tons of weapons. And it looks like they're going to be back for maybe 1 more year. Ben announced after the game that he is not going to retire. He will be back. I thought he was definitely done. I mean, maybe if they would have went out in the AFC Championship game or the Super Bowl, he would have retired. But he can't go out like this. He looked decent. At the beginning of the game, he looked bad. But he came around, threw 5 touchdowns. So he was able to find the open guys. And why I say decent is a couple of those touchdowns came on sort of like backyard plays where it was a broken play and he ended up just throwing deep. And the Jaguars couldn't stop it. If it was a design play, Steelers really didn't do anything. I was very disappointed in them in that. But in the end, when you score 42 points, you should win the game. That's it. Win the game. I don't care what a lot of people are calling for Todd Haley's head, saying that the offense wasn't prepared. I think it's on the head coach. You can't come out in the first quarter and look like that. You can't be down 14-0. And then I think it was 21-0 actually at one point. So when you're down 3 touchdowns, that's pretty much the game. You're able to battle back, but then in the end, you can't get stops. Because at the beginning of the game, you didn't have any chance. You didn't have any control of the ball to wear the Jaguars' defense down, give your defense some rest. So in the second half, the Jaguars were just running all over the Steelers, going, pushing the ball, and that was the game. There's not much else to say other than that. Le'Veon Bell, he had a lot of talk. He only had 67 yards. I think he made some key plays, though, later in the game. He had 88 yards receiving and a touchdown. But, I mean, it's not really on the offensive guys. I'll be honest. And I don't even think Ryan Shazier would have helped if he was in the game. Because at what point is it on the game plan? Is it on the coaching? Maybe you have to start doing some stunts up front. If you're getting that big, if you're getting pushed back every play, something needs to change. I mean, maybe even throw in a 5-man front. Like, I don't know what you want to do. You can stack the box all you want, but if your line is getting pushed back every play, you're not going to be able to stop them. They're going to run for touchdowns, and they're just going to eat the whole clock up. I don't know what the time of possession was off the end of the game. I'm just looking at the general individual stats on this. Antonio Brown had a great game, 132 yards, 2 touchdowns. He was hobbling a little bit, But as I speculated before the game, when you have like a bone bruise or calf bruise, some type of muscle bruise, you're pretty much going to be fine. I mean, you take 1 or 2 shots, you might feel it. In the NFL, they do a lot of pain-killing shots. I hate to say it. I know a lot of people hate that aspect of the NFL because they think it gives players problems later on in life. But outside of that, I mean, what are you going to do? So that's it. Pretty much. Steelers season is over. I was hoping to start this Southbound Sports Report to talk about some of the playoffs things going into the end of the season. Well, looks like we'll be just doing general game talk as the Steelers are eliminated. The Jaguars move on. The Jaguars, they're such a... I just feel like they need to have the coaching down. They had the coaching down today. They outcoached Mike Tomlin. It wasn't even a question. It's not even a question now. If you look at it, they were outcoached. Mike Tomlin had no game plan. This is probably one of the worst Steelers games preparation-wise I've seen. I was a little worried late in the season, I'm not going to lie. When the Browns came to it, I think it was week 17, and they pushed the Steelers in that game, almost got their first win. I kind of chalked it up to a couple things. Steelers probably are resting a bunch of guys, which they were to get ready for the playoffs. Antonio Brown wasn't playing. He hasn't played for a couple weeks. He comes back in the game, and then you have the Browns trying to get one win at least. But, I mean, it comes back now. You have to have that preparation. You have to have it every week. And I know, just looking at that's one game. That's a microcosm of the season. You don't want to hang your heads on that, but when you're getting late in the season and you're having close games because against teams you should just blow out, it should have been a warning sign. And I knew the Jaguars were the worst possible matchup. I think the Steelers match up much better against the Patriots. I don't even want to give them the excuse of saying they were looking towards the Patriots because they got their asses kicked by the Jaguars in week 5. So, I mean, this is pretty much the worst matchup. The Jaguars came in, played smash mouth football. I thought that was going to be the Steelers' strength. It's always been smash mouth football, Pittsburgh Steelers. I know they have the weapons on offense. They kind of spread it out. But the Steelers looked like a Big 12 football team in the NFL today. All offense, no defense, couldn't get off the field. You can put up points, but that's what it reminded me of watching a Big 12 team play. And once you reach that level, that's pretty much it. They need to kind of get a new identity on defense. I don't know. I would push for a new coordinator, something. Something has to change because it's not working. Now, in the other game, I did wait to do this. I didn't follow right after the game. I figured I'd relax and try to watch the Saints and Vikings. I said that was probably going to be the best game to me. And it came down to a touchdown on the last play. And I'm just going to touch on it here because we're going to talk about it on the big show. I know we are. But Saints had the lead. I think it was a 1-point lead. They came back. They battled. The Vikings were in control of the game early. And the Saints were able to come back, make the coaching adjustments. You have a great quarterback in Drew Brees. They're going to get their points. The Vikings had, I think, 10 seconds left. They were all the way back on their 30. They ran a double out on the right sideline, trying to get near field goal range for a game-winning field goal. Keenum throws it up. I think he was the quarterback at that time. I think he played the whole game. Keenum throws it up down to Stephon Diggs, who jumps, makes the catch. Now, Williams, the free safety for the Saints, comes up. Looks like he's going to have a clear tackle. And all he has to do is hit him. He's about 3 or 4 yards from the sideline. All he has to do is wrap him up. Take him to the ground. There's no timeouts. They're not going to run up there and be able to get another play. Their chance was have the throw to the sideline, maybe do a toe tap to stop the clock. Where that ball was thrown, I don't think he's going to be able to get out of bounds. But Williams doesn't tackle him. He puts his head down and runs right underneath him. And it gave me flashes back to Ryan Shazier. You can't put your head down when you're a defensive player. You can't. Because what happens, worst case scenario, you're injured. You lose feelings in your leg, could be paralyzed, whatever. If you hit the guy hard enough, you're right on with your head down. This guy, head down, misses completely. It actually looked like he kind of ducked. I mean, I don't even know if he was in a good enough position, though, to stand up and knock the guy back. Because if you're underneath him, you stand up, flip his legs back under you, he might fall down. Maybe that's what he was going for, but he didn't look like he was going to stand up. He just kept his head down and ran right under him. So on that aspect, great win for the Vikings. Killer win. Very exciting. Came down to the last play. Steelers had their chance late, had a couple onside kicks not go their way. At that point, that's all they had. So both games kind of came down to the wire. The Jaguars were controlling so much that the Steelers couldn't get them off the field. And even though it was only a 3-point game, the Steelers scored a touchdown late with no time left. So, or I think 1 second, they might have tried another onside kick, which was just a squib kick that went nowhere. But at that point, yeah. What do you have? 2 decent games. The second game was much better. And we'll be talking about it this week. So check us out. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Southbound Sports. It's S-Bound Sports on Twitter. And we do a big show, the Southbound Sports Show, Tuesday nights at 9 o'clock. And this is going to be our shorter podcast-only format. We do stream this live on Spreaker, which I think is tied into Twitter. So if you follow us on Twitter, you can see whenever we go live. And we'll be doing some live sports shows, taking on some hot topics whenever they hit, whenever they break. So follow us. I'll keep you updated if you go to our Twitter whenever this gets listed on iTunes if you want to listen to it in the podcast format. But that's it. Thanks again. And we'll probably be getting back into this maybe next weekend whenever the other games come around.